Jungkook changed his phone wallpaper on live. Fans noticed Jimin and froze. I didn't set that photo. Jungkook's voice was barely above a whisper, but the panic in his eyes screamed louder than any livestream glitch. The phone slipped from his hands, hitting the floor of the dimly lit studio with a dull, sickening thud. Time slowed. The chat exploded in real time, and the glowing screen, still visible, froze mid-frame, revealing what millions had seen only seconds before: a photo of Jimin, sleeping, vulnerable, and very clearly not meant to be seen. Outside, rain lashed against the windows of HYB's rehearsal building, drowning out the growing chaos in the chat room as hashtags like Jimin on Jungkook's wallpaper and what did we just see soared into trending territory. But inside, Jungkook didn't move. His breath caught in his throat, heart pounding like a war drum in a battlefield that only he could see. Because he remembered, vividly, locking his phone screen just minutes before the live stream. He hadn't changed anything. And he sure as hell hadn't used that photo. The door creaked open behind him. Jungkook turned sharply, adrenaline flooding his veins. It was Namjoon. "Turn off the stream," Namjoon said in Korean, his voice low, grave. "I can't," Jungkook replied, swallowing hard. "It's out of my hands. The app froze. They already saw it." Namjoon shut the door behind him. There was no protocol for this. No script. No PR stunt to mask what had just happened. Because this wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't supposed to happen. As the rain intensified outside, the room became a vacuum of tension and unspoken dread. Jungkook felt a sharp tremor in his hands. He wasn't afraid of the fans, not really. What scared him was what the image implied. That someone had accessed his phone. That someone knew. And Jimin had no idea. 2 days earlier, Jungkook had woken up to a text from an unknown number. They know about him, changed the wallpaper. At first, he dismissed it as a sick prank. BTS lived under constant scrutiny, and trolls always pushed boundaries. But now, with the image splashed across fan forums and media headlines already speculating, the fear was real, palpable. He remembered that night vividly. Jimin had been exhausted after a 14-hour dance rehearsal, collapsing on Jungkook's couch, murmuring something soft and unintelligible before drifting to sleep. Jungkook, unable to help himself, had taken the photo, not to share, not for attention, just to remember something unspoken, something sacred. But he'd never saved it to his wallpaper. He'd buried it in a hidden album behind 3 encrypted folders. Someone had dug it out. By nightfall, armies were in chaos. Some defended him, others questioned everything. Media outlets buzzed like hornets. The company released a vague statement about technical errors and malicious tampering, but the damage was done. Jimin still hadn't called. Jungkook stared at his phone in the silence of his apartment, surrounded by shadows and unanswered questions. The walls closed in slowly, filled with memories and the weight of choices he never intended to make public. A knock at the door startled him. He froze. "Taehyung," he called out. No answer. Another knock, slower, heavier. He opened the door. Jimin stood there, soaked to the bone, his eyes unreadable. "You need to tell me the truth," he said quietly. And suddenly, the air between them was a storm of its own. The truth was, Jungkook wasn't just afraid of the photo being leaked. He was afraid of what it meant, that someone had been watching them long before that night. That someone had access not just to his phone, but to the spaces between them. The silences, the glances, the unspoken. He wanted to protect Jimin. From the fans, from the media, from whoever was behind this. But how could he, when he wasn't even sure how deep the rot went? They sat across from each other in silence, the city lights casting reflections like ghosts on the window pane. Jimin finally spoke. "You didn't change it," he said. Not a question, a statement. Jungkook nodded slowly. "They want us to panic," Jimin whispered. "They want us to crack." Jungkook looked up. There was steel in Jimin's eyes now, resolve tempered by fear, yes, but also something else. Fire. "This isn't just about us anymore," Jimin continued. "This is about control. Someone is pulling strings, and we have to cut them before they hang us with it." Jungkook exhaled. For the first time in days, he felt the faintest flicker of clarity. So they started digging. Phone logs, deleted texts, cloud backups, forgotten security footage from studio hallways. Every breadcrumb led to another, tangled in a web of betrayal neither of them expected. A name came up, someone close. Too close. Someone who had access, who knew passwords, who disappeared 2 months ago under mysterious circumstances. And then, late one night, another message appeared. He was never yours. He was always watching. Jungkook stared at the screen, heart hammering. Jimin leaned over his shoulder. Who? He. But Jungkook already knew. Because this didn't start with the wallpaper. It started much earlier. Before the fame. Before the music. Before BTS. And the secrets buried in the past were clawing their way back up. I'm not crazy, Jungkook said, voice hoarse, eyes bloodshot. I never said you were, Jimin replied quietly, though the tremor in his voice betrayed 1,000 unsaid things. He leaned against the edge of Jungkook's kitchen counter, his soaked hoodie dripping onto the tile floor. The air between them was thick, dense with questions neither of them were brave enough to say aloud yet. I know what I saw, Jungkook whispered, scrolling back through his phone. The photo was gone now, erased, replaced with his default lock screen, as if someone or something was taunting him. Jimin reached forward and gently took the phone from his hand. Let me see. Jungkook hesitated. I said it's gone. I want to see anyway. Jungkook handed it over. Jimin studied the screen, flipping through apps, checking the background settings, file storage, even the cache. Nothing. It's like it was never there, he murmured. But it was, Jimin. Millions of people saw it. The timestamp, the live feed, the freeze frame, it's all over the internet. Jimin didn't respond right away. He looked up, eyes meeting Jungkook. There was something ancient in his gaze, like he had aged a decade in the past 24 hours. Do you think someone inside the company is doing this? He finally asked. I don't know, maybe. But it's someone who knows us, our history, someone who knows what to look for. Jimin's jaw tightened. There's something I didn't tell you, he said. Jungkook blinked. Jimin walked over to the couch, sat down, leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. He didn't look up as he spoke. 2 nights ago, I got a message. Anonymous number, said, how did it feel being his secret for this long? Jungkook's blood turned to ice. I didn't tell anyone because I thought it was a sassing or someone playing games. But now, after what happened on your live. Why didn't you tell me? Jungkook's voice cracked. There was betrayal in it, not rage, but something more intimate, something raw. Jimin looked up then, his voice shaking. Because I didn't want it to be real. Jungkook sat down beside him, silent. The room seemed to shrink. Jimin's phone buzzed. A new message, unknown number. Still think it's just a game. Attached was a photo of the two of them, sleeping, in Jungkook's apartment. Jimin's breath caught in his throat. Is that from last night? He asked. Jungkook nodded slowly, horror blooming on his face. The angle was from inside the apartment. High, hidden, surveillance level. We're being watched, Jimin whispered. No, Jungkook muttered, standing up suddenly. No, this isn't happening. He began tearing through his apartment, pulling apart bookshelves, checking light fixtures, behind the TV, under the couch. Paranoia flooded him like a fever. Jimin joined him, both of them frantic, silent except for the heavy sound of their breathing and the thudding of their hearts. In the ceiling vent above the hallway, they found it. A small black camera, no bigger than a thumb. Jungkook stared at it like it was a venomous snake. Jimin's face was pale. How long has that been there? Jungkook said nothing. He reached for the camera with shaking hands, yanked it free, and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall and shattered. Seconds later, both their phones buzzed simultaneously. Temper, there are more. Jimin turned slowly to face him. We need to go to the company. No, Jungkook said, backing away. No, what if it's them? What if someone in HYBE is doing this? We can't trust anyone right now. You think this is bigger than just us. I know it is. Jimin's face hardened. Then we find out who, together. They spent the night packing everything valuable, hard drives, SD cards, old phones, paper journals. They left the apartment just after 2 a.m., faces covered, hats low, slipping into the backseat of a hired car. No security, no staff, just the two of them racing into the unknown. They arrived at an off-grid safe house Yoongi had once used when escaping press after a scandal. It was in a remote part of Gangwon-do, buried in trees and fog. Inside it was cold, dusty, quiet. But they were alone. For now. By morning, the headlines had exploded. Jungkook's mystery, Wallpaper sparks romance rumors with Jimin. Private photo leak. HYBE denies involvement in BTS privacy breach. Armies divided. Shippers rejoice, realists demand answers. Jimin paced the living room, clutching a mug of tea he didn't drink. This is spiraling, he said. What do we do next? Jungkook stared at the wall. We bait them. Jimin turned. What? We give them something to watch, something that feels real. And while they're watching, we dig deeper. We follow the trail backward. Whoever's doing this, they want a reaction. Jimin set his mug down. You want to give them a performance. I want to give them hell. They went live again that night. A casual Q&A on Weverse. Smiles, inside jokes, shared glances. Fans ate it up. But behind the camera, their phones ran encrypted scripts, tracing incoming traffic, IP addresses, watching for breaches. And then something unexpected happened. A name popped up. Kim Taehyung. Jungkook stared at the monitor. No, that can't be right. Jimin leaned in, confused. He's been in Paris for Fashion Week. But the trace was clear. A ghost signature pinged from Taehyung's old IP address, from his personal network, from inside his smart home system. Jimin looked at him, voice tight. You think he's involved? I don't know, but we need to ask. Jungkook reached for his phone. And that's when the power went out. All at once, the safe house plunged into darkness. The last thing they heard was a mechanical click, outside. A car door, followed by footsteps. And then, knocking 3 times. Deliberate, slow. Not a stranger's knock. Not even a threat. But a warning. The knock wasn't frantic. It wasn't polite either. It was slow, 3 thuds spaced evenly, too controlled, too knowing. Like whoever stood on the other side of the door already owned the fear curling in their chests. Jungkook stood frozen in the dark, the glow of the backup power light casting sharp shadows across his face. Jimin's eyes darted to him, waiting for direction, for any sign of what to do next. Jungkook moved first. Silently, he grabbed the closest object within reach, a broken mic stand leaning near the couch. It was pathetic as a weapon, but it was something. Jimin's hand was already on his phone, thumbs flying across the screen to kill the live stream they'd set as bait. If this was going south, it couldn't be recorded. Not yet. Not like this. The second knock came. Still 3 beats. Still slow. Still deadly calm. Then a voice. It's me. A voice they hadn't heard in weeks. Soft, familiar, low. Taehyung. Jimin's hand trembled. No, he whispered. It can't be. Jungkook walked to the door, careful, each step deliberate. He peeked through the peephole. Taehyung stood alone. Wearing a black hoodie, eyes half-shadowed by the porch light, his expression unreadable. In his hand, he held up his phone. The screen displayed a photo, Jungkook and Jimin asleep, the same one from the text. Open the door, Taehyung said quietly. Jungkook's heart slammed against his ribs. He unlocked the bolt but didn't open it fully, just enough to meet his eyes. Where did you get that photo? He asked. Taehyung didn't blink. Can I come in? No. I'm not here to hurt you. Jimin stepped up behind Jungkook. You sent the picture, didn't you? Taehyung's jaw flexed. No. Then how the hell do you have it? There was silence. And then, finally, a crack in Taehyung's face. Guilt. I think I've been compromised. Jungkook pushed the door open wider. Jimin stepped back, his body taut like a bowstring ready to snap. Taehyung stepped in slowly, carefully, scanning the room like he expected something to jump out. You're not supposed to be in Korea, Jungkook said, shutting the door behind him. I left Paris 2 days ago, Taehyung replied. But no one knows, not even management. I haven't been in contact with anyone. I needed to disappear just like you. Jimin crossed his arms. So you show up at our hideout with a photo no one's supposed to have, saying you've been compromised and expect us to believe that. I know how it sounds, Taehyung said, but I didn't come here to lie. I came because someone is using my system, my home, my passwords, my name. Jungkook narrowed his eyes. Then how did you get the photo? Taehyung sighed and pulled a small flash drive from his pocket. I found this taped behind my piano. I wouldn't have noticed it if my dog hadn't chewed the leg and loosened the wood. I plugged it in, just curiosity at first, and there were folders. Photos, videos, not just of me. Of you, of us, all of us, even stuff from 2017. Things no one had access to, not even staff. Jimin sat down slowly, trying to keep his hands from shaking. Are you saying we've been under surveillance for years? Yes. By who? Jungkook asked, voice sharp. I don't know, Taehyung said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I think it started with Jin. The room went still. What are you talking about? Jungkook said. Before he enlisted, Taehyung began, Jin started acting weird, paranoid. He installed his own security system at home, hired a private investigator. He kept saying we were being watched, that something didn't add up. We all laughed it off. We thought it was stress, the pressure of leaving. But now. He let the sentence trail off. Jungkook's head spun. Jimin looked up, eyes burning. Are you saying Jin knew about this and didn't tell us? No, Taehyung said quickly. He tried, I just think we didn't listen. The room plunged into silence again, broken only by the faint sound of rain on the roof. Then Jungkook stood, packing. This is too big, he said. If this has been going on for years, if someone's been watching since our debut or even before, who would have that kind of access, that kind of motive? Jimin looked at him, something flickering behind his eyes. What if it's not about all of us? He said slowly. What if it's about one of us? They all froze. Taehyung's gaze dropped. I found a pattern, he said. In the files, the folders are labeled with dates, but some have names. Golden Boy, Seraphim, Wings, Euphoria. Jungkook's blood went cold. Those weren't just random names. They were code words from old concepts, their albums, songs, all of them connected to him. Taehyung looked at him. They've been tracking you. Jungkook collapsed into the chair. Jimin moved closer instinctively, hand brushing against his. Why me? Jungkook asked, voice cracking. Why would anyone go through this much trouble for me? No one answered. Then Taehyung spoke. There's something else, something I've never told you. Jimin braced himself. Jungkook sat up. Taehyung exhaled. Back in 2020, I found an email in my personal inbox. It was encrypted. Took me weeks to open it. It was from someone calling themselves Hirith. They said one of us had been selected, that the others would serve as camouflage, that the experiment had begun. Jimin's face turned white. What kind of experiment? I don't know, I thought it was a sick joke. But now, with everything happening, the way they've followed you, manipulated your phone, your live, the footage from inside your apartment, Jungkook, they've been grooming you for something. Jungkook's voice broke. I'm not a project, I'm a person. I know, Taehyung whispered. Jimin reached for him, holding his hand tightly. Then we fight, Jimin said. No more running, we find whoever's doing this, we end it. And if it's someone inside the company, Taehyung asked, what if it's someone we trusted? Jungkook's jaw clenched. Then they burn. A sudden sound pierced the moment, a shrill alarm from Jimin's phone. Proximity alert. Jungkook grabbed the tablet from the table, checked the security feed. A black van had pulled up down the dirt road. No plates, no headlights. Jimin's voice was steady. We have to go. They grabbed what they could. As they ran through the back door into the woods, Jungkook turned for one last look. The house was silent again. But something shimmered on the second-floor window. A red dot. A laser. Tracking. Watching. Waiting. Branches whipped across Jungkook's face as he tore through the dark forest, breath ragged, mud clinging to his boots like claws. Behind him, Jimin stumbled but kept pace, his breath uneven but determined. Taehyung followed last, his long legs carrying him silently between trees like a shadow. None of them spoke. There was no time. Behind them, the black van idled near the cabin. Moments later, headlights snapped on too late. The trio had already vanished into the woods like ghosts. Jimin's voice broke the silence first, hushed and hoarse. Where are we going? There's an old maintenance road near the cliffs, Taehyung answered. If we follow the stream downhill, it'll take us there. I used it once during a photo shoot. No one else knows it exists. Good, Jungkook muttered, because whoever those people were, they weren't fans. Suddenly, the forest lit up with a pale white beam. A drone. It hovered overhead, scanning, blinking red. Down, Jungkook hissed, yanking Jimin to the ground. Taehyung dove behind a log, eyes scanning the sky. Military-grade surveillance, he whispered. That's not paparazzi. The drone moved on after a moment, vanishing into the canopy. Jimin pushed himself up slowly, wiping leaves from his face. Why the hell would anyone use a military drone to track us? This is insane. Jungkook didn't answer. He couldn't, because deep down, a part of him had already begun to believe something darker than blackmail, something bigger than the industry, bigger than betrayal. He wasn't just being watched. He was being studied. Taehyung pulled out the flash drive again, holding it up. There's a name buried in the metadata, someone called Project Icarus. And guess what? The location of the files was pinged from inside HYBE's Seoul data center. Jimin's mouth fell open. So this is coming from the company. No, Taehyung said grimly. It's coming from under it. What the hell does that mean? It means someone is using the company's infrastructure without official knowledge, piggybacking on their servers, hiding inside their system like a parasite. Whoever's doing this knows the architecture from the inside. Jungkook's voice cracked. Then we're not safe anywhere. No, Taehyung said, we're not. Hours later, they reached an abandoned ranger station. It smelled like mold and rust, but it had a roof and thick walls. It would have to do. Jungkook collapsed onto the floor, chest heaving. Jimin slid down beside him, hands shaking. Do you remember the first time we met? He asked suddenly, voice soft. Jungkook turned his head, surprised by the question. Of course I do, you were. So sure of yourself, I was terrified. Jimin laughed bitterly. You were shaking. Was not. Were too. Taehyung smiled faintly in the corner, but said nothing. I thought back then, Jimin said, eyes distant, that fame would be the scariest thing we'd ever face. The cameras, the fans, the pressure to be perfect. Jungkook looked at him, eyes softening. And now? Now I miss the simplicity of that fear. There was a pause, thick, heavy. Then Jungkook leaned forward, voice shaking. If something happens to me. No, Jimin interrupted, sharp and immediate. Don't even start. I'm serious, Jungkook said. If this is really about me, if I'm the reason you're both in danger, I need to make it right. Taehyung stood abruptly. Then we don't run anymore. We confront it. And how do you propose we do that? Jimin asked. Waltz into HYBE and ask to speak to the man behind the curtain. No, Taehyung said, eyes dark. We break in. The silence was deafening. Jungkook looked at him like he'd lost his mind. You want us to hack HYBE? I want us to bleed the truth out of them. Later that night, as they huddled around a battered old laptop salvaged from the station's backroom, Taehyung pulled up a crude schematic of the company's internal server system. He'd had it for years, part of his quiet paranoia after Jin's warning. No one had taken him seriously then. Now, it was their only shot. Jungkook glanced over the map. There's an auxiliary data vault. Underground. Requires biometric access. Who's biometric? Jimin asked. Taehyung hesitated. Mine. Jungkook's brow furrowed. Why would they give you access? They didn't. I hacked the clearance, years ago. Jimin stared at him, incredulous. Why would you do that? Because I knew something wasn't right. The password changes. The unlogged server traffic. Jin disappearing from messages and reappearing like nothing happened. The silence around his enlistment, too clean. Jungkook's voice was flat. Are you saying Jin's not in the military? I'm saying I'm not sure where he is. Jimin sank into the chair, stunned. Taehyung leaned closer. If we get in, I can clone the core files. We'll have proof. Names, communication, everything. And then what? Jungkook asked bitterly. Release it to the world, destroy our careers, burn everything we built. Taehyung looked at him with fierce eyes. I'd rather die with the truth than live in someone else's cage. Jungkook stared at him for a long time. Then he nodded. We do it tomorrow. They slept in turns, but no one really rested. The air was filled with tension, each creak of the wood echoing like gunshots. At dawn, they made their way back to Seoul under the cover of fog, slipping into the city like shadows returning to a battlefield. That night, dressed in civilian clothes, faces covered, hearts pounding, they entered the underground sublevel of HYBE through a forgotten tunnel beneath the river. Motion sensors, cameras, infrared lasers. Taehyung led them silently, bypassing each security measure with eerie precision. At the last door, a scanner lit up blue. Retina scan, Taehyung said. I go in first. He leaned in. The scanner beeped. The door slid open with a hiss. Cold air rushed out. Rows of black servers blinked silently inside, like sleeping giants. Jimin swallowed hard. Taehyung moved fast, pulling out a portable drive, hooking it to the main node. Jungkook stood by the door, nerves fraying. The screen blinked. Accessing. 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 Then, welcome, Icarus. The screen went white. Jungkook's breath caught. That name again. A second screen appeared. A video file, dated 3 days ago. Taehyung clicked it. Jin's face filled the screen. Eyes blank, voice robotic. If you're seeing this, it means the protocol has failed. Icarus is awake. Jimin backed away. Jungkook froze. The video continued. Terminate all handlers. Erase memory caches. Prepare the vessel for final phase. Taehyung yanked the drive out. Suddenly, the alarms began to scream. Red lights, sirens. A robotic voice echoed. Containment breach. Protocol override. The doors slammed shut. Gas hissed from the vents. Jungkook felt the world tilt. Jimin's voice reached him like a dream. Kook, stay with me. But he was already falling. Into memory. Into code. Into whatever they had made him. When Jungkook opened his eyes, the world didn't return in full. It dripped back in fragments, light first, painful and sterile, then sound, sharp and metallic, beeping, a slow, mechanical hum, something colder than ice pressed against his wrist, something warm against his temple. He tried to move, but his limbs were heavy, like he'd been submerged in cement. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words stuck to his tongue like sand. He's waking up, a voice said, female, calm, clinical. Another voice, lower male. Activate the restraint grid. A surge of electricity jolted through his spine. Jungkook gasped, every nerve screaming in white-hot defiance. He wasn't supposed to react, the woman said, startled. Doesn't matter, the process has already begun. Jungkook blinked, Shapes came into focus. A room, not a hospital, not a studio. Clean, windowless with polished concrete walls. Cameras in each corner, monitors lining the far wall. His wrists were bound in translucent restraints that pulsed faintly with blue light. Biometric locks. And standing behind the glass, staring directly into his soul, Park Jimin. No, not his Jimin. This Jimin was calm, cold, dressed in sterile white, his hair slicked back, his eyes unreadable. Jungkook's chest constricted. "Jimin," he croaked. The figure behind the glass tilted his head slightly, as if examining an artifact, not a person. "Is that what you remember?" the man asked, his voice too even. "That name?" Jungkook's heart thundered. "What are you talking about?" The woman stepped into view. She was tall, older, her expression devoid of empathy. Her ID badge read, Dr. HCO, Genetic Cognition Division. "Welcome back, Subject 61K, she said. "We've been waiting for you to activate." "I'm not a subject," Jungkook hissed. "I'm a person." "You're both," the woman replied, "and much more." Jungkook turned his head toward the glass, locking eyes with the man who wore Jimin's face. "This is a trick," he growled. "You're not him." "No," the man said softly, "but I remember everything he did, every word, every touch, every lie." Jungkook's blood ran cold. "You copied him," he whispered. "You cloned him." "Copied," the man scoffed. "I am him, a perfected version, loyal, controlled, unflawed by affection or doubt." The restraints tightened around Jungkook's wrists. "Why?" he demanded. "What do you want from me?" Dr. Seo tapped a console beside the bed. "You are the first successful synthesis of emotional intelligence and neural weaponization. The experiment has always been you." Jungkook stared at her, horror unfurling in waves. "What are you talking about?" "Icarus," she said, as if that explained everything. "An initiative launched under Project Echo, hidden inside HYBE's infrastructure, buried under layers of fan engagement algorithms, designed to create the perfect vessel, obedient, adored, untraceable. You were built in the spotlight so no one would question the shadows." "I was born in Busan," Jungkook snapped. "I have parents, a family." "You were placed," Dr. Seo corrected. "Adopted into the illusion, every memory, every friendship programmed, reinforced, designed for resilience." "No," Jungkook whispered. "That's not true." "It is," the synthetic Jimin said from behind the glass. "And deep down, you've always known." Something in Jungkook cracked. And then the door burst open. A scream. A flash. A body flew through the glass. Real Jimin, his Jimin, tumbled into the room, bleeding from his shoulder, wild-eyed and furious. Behind him, Taehyung appeared, firing a stolen weapon into the ceiling as sirens blared again. Jimin crawled to Jungkook, reaching for the restraints. "Kook, look at me, it's me, the real me." Jungkook couldn't breathe. Dr. Seo pressed a hidden trigger, and the clone Jimin lunged forward, crashing into the shattered glass, tackling Taehyung to the ground. Jimin screamed. "He's activated, they synced him to your memories." Jungkook tried to warn Taehyung, but the words didn't come fast enough. The clone was already choking him, eyes dead, movements mechanical and precise. Jimin slammed his fist against the console, searching for the release override. "What's the code?" he shouted at the doctor. But she was gone, disappeared in the chaos. Jungkook strained, pulling against the restraints until his wrists bled. "I remember," he gasped. "The code 0925. Jimin entered it. The restraints hissed and released. Jungkook surged to his feet just as the clone turned. The two locked eyes, mirror and man. Rage met cold emptiness, and then they clashed. The fight was brutal. Fists, knees, blood. The clone was faster, more agile, every movement calculated. But Jungkook fought with something the other didn't have: grief, anger, love. He slammed the clone into the wall. "You may have my face," Jungkook snarled, "but you'll never have me." And he drove a broken shard of glass through its throat. The clone choked, spasmed, and fell. Taehyung coughed on the floor, blood staining his shirt, eyes dazed. "We have to go," Jimin said, grabbing Jungkook's arm. "There's more coming. This whole facility is wired to collapse if compromised." Jungkook looked around, at the files, the monitors, the decades of manipulation. "Then we take it all with us." They grabbed what they could: data drives, vials, encrypted keys. As they stumbled through the underground tunnels, explosions began behind them. The fire chased their heels. Heat blistered their skin. They burst into the night, coughing, falling into the wet grass. Above them, the facility burned. Jungkook lay there, staring at the stars. Jimin crawled beside him, shaking. "You okay?" he asked. Jungkook turned to him. "No." And for the first time in his life, he allowed himself to cry, not from fear, but from the shattering weight of everything he once believed in being nothing but a lie. Taehyung sat up slowly, looking at the horizon. "They'll come for us." "I know," Jungkook said, "but now we come for them first." The city looked different now. Colder, sharper. Like the veil had been ripped from Jungkook's eyes, and every street lamp, every advertisement, every flicker of BTS's polished image on towering billboards felt like a ghost mocking him. He walked through the back alleys of Seoul cloaked in a hoodie and bruises, a phantom in the city that once worshipped him. Behind him, Jimin kept his hood low, his shoulder still wrapped in stained gauze. Taehyung brought up the rear, sunglasses masking his swollen eye, clutching a stolen phone with trembling fingers. None of them spoke until they reached the hidden entrance. It was a karaoke bar, long closed, condemned on paper. But behind the cracked mirror in room 13 was a staircase that spiraled downward into darkness. It led to a space Jin once jokingly called the Graveyard of Idols. A safe house created by a former manager who vanished after blowing the whistle on a rigged survival show. Jin had kept it secret, never explaining why. Now, it was all they had left. Inside, the air was musty. Mold kissed the corners of the floor. A single table, a few monitors, a dusty couch that creaked when Jimin collapsed onto it. "This is where we hide," he muttered. Jungkook didn't answer. He was already connecting the stolen drives to the old terminal. The screen buzzed to life, flickering as code began to stream. Endless files, names, coordinates, financial transactions, experiment logs, subjects. Taehyung stood over him, arms crossed, eyes locked on a single file that began to decrypt. Subject 3A, Seraphim. Jimin leaned forward. "That was one of the folders we found in the flash drive." Taehyung nodded slowly. "I thought it referred to me." "You?" Jimin asked. "I was part of a different selection phase," Taehyung said, his voice barely audible. "They ran tests on me too, years ago, physical scans, cognitive reflexes, but it didn't progress. I never made it past the first tier." Jungkook turned his head sharply. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I didn't want you to look at me like I was one of them," Taehyung snapped. Jimin stood. "You're not." Taehyung looked away. The screen shifted again. Echo protocol, phase IV initiated. "What the hell is that?" Jimin asked. Jungkook clicked through rapidly. Files opened, lines of dense code interspersed with video stills and biometric data. Facial recognition overlays, heart rate logs, brainwave scans, all tagged with one name. Jeon Jungkook. His hand hovered above the mouse. His chest tightened. "This was never about making me a better idol," he said quietly. "It was about controlling me." "And now they've lost control," Taehyung murmured. Jimin glanced at the door. "Which means they'll escalate." At that moment, the terminal beeped. A live connection, an incoming ping. "No way," Jungkook said, staring at the IP trace. "It's coming from inside HYBE's legal division." Jimin stepped forward. "Who the hell would risk that?" Jungkook answered the ping. The screen went black. Then a face appeared. Namjoon. But not the one they remembered. His eyes were hollow, tired, a man unraveling under weight too heavy to carry. "Jungkook," he said, If you're seeing this, it means you found the vault. Jungkook's heart stilled. Taehyung, he whispered. I tried to stop it, the recording continued. For years, I fought behind the scenes. I signed the contracts. I met the men in suits. I smiled for the cameras. But every step I took closer to the truth, I lost a piece of myself. This company was never ours. It was a vessel. We were just the stars they strapped to the rocket. Jimin's mouth fell open. Namjoon's voice grew shakier. The Echo Protocol began long before you debuted. It was embedded into the training system. They were testing how far fans could be manipulated, how much influence we could exert over emotion, politics, consumption, everything. You, Jungkook, you were the final iteration, the perfect vessel. Stop, Jungkook whispered. Please stop. But the video played on. I couldn't save Jin, I tried. He was the only one who got close to uncovering the root, and when he did, he was erased. His enlistment, fabricated, his messages, pre-written. They took him. Jimin's legs gave out. He sank to the floor, hand over his mouth. They will come for you, Namjoon said, eyes wild now. Not to kill you, to reset you. They'll wipe you clean and start again. And if that fails, they'll burn you out, make you the villain, a scandal, a suicide, a martyr. Taehyung turned away. Jungkook couldn't breathe. Namjoon's final words echoed like a curse. Trust no one, not even your own reflection. The feed cut. Silence. Then the sound of someone crying. Jimin, quietly, broken. Jungkook knelt beside him. This isn't your fault. Jimin looked up, eyes red. You don't get it. I loved you, Jungkook, I still do. But I don't know if that was me or the version of me they fed into your system. It was you, Jungkook said fiercely. It was always you. But what if we're all just echoes? Jimin whispered. Fragments of what they allowed us to be. Jungkook didn't answer. He couldn't, because the thought had already buried itself inside his skull. Taehyung stood up abruptly. There's one more name in the files. Jungkook looked at the screen. Handler code, Hades. Jimin's brows furrowed. That name was in the facility logs too. Taehyung clicked it open. The screen loaded slowly, then revealed a file labeled with a date. 2005. A video played. Grainy, handheld. A child sat in a white room hooked to sensors. A woman paced behind glass dictating notes. The child had a familiar face. Jungkook. Jimin gasped. You were born into this, he said. The video continued. Then the woman turned. It was someone they knew. A face they'd seen at every company dinner, every holiday broadcast. HYBE's beloved PR director. Ms. Kang. She was Hades. Jungkook stood, fists clenched, shaking. I want to end this. Jimin looked at him, wiping tears away. Then we end it. Taehyung inserted the second drive. Let's leak everything. No filters, no edits. The world deserves to know. No, Jungkook said. They both looked at him. We do it live. His voice was steel. On their network, their platform, we hijack the next BTS livestream and we show the truth. Jimin's lips parted, horrified and awed. They'll kill us. Then let them try. From the depths of silence, something stronger than fear began to rise. Rage, purpose. Hope. The echo had become a scream. The clock struck 19:00 KST. 7 years to the day since BTS first walked onto a stage as 7 boys with borrowed time and the weight of the world on their shoulders. Now only 3 of them stood in the shadows, ghosts in a machine they once built with sweat and song. Tonight, they wouldn't sing. They would expose everything. Inside the HYBE building, the silence was unnerving. Jungkook moved like smoke, dark clothes blending into the back corridors. Taehyung trailed behind, disguised as a stage tech, hoodie low, earpiece feeding him the silent rhythm of surveillance cameras and patrols. Jimin, on the other side of the building, breathed through the pain in his shoulder, walking straight into the control booth with a stolen badge and a heart on fire. The plan was dangerous, reckless, perfect. They would hijack the Weverse livestream scheduled to launch BTS's next virtual project, one built on holograms and AI simulations. Immortality through innovation, the campaign had promised. But underneath it all was the same old lie: control, manufactured emotion, fan engagement weaponized for obedience. Jungkook slipped into the dressing room. It hadn't changed. Same white leather seats, same black vanity mirrors, same sterile scent of synthetic citrus meant to calm nerves. But tonight, nothing would be calm. He looked into the mirror. For a moment, he thought of the words Namjoon had said. Trust no one, not even your own reflection. He clenched his jaw. Not tonight. Tonight, he would become the monster they feared, not the product they owned. Jimin's voice came through the comms. We're live in 5. Taehyung, final firewall breached. Signals clean, you're untraceable for now. Jungkook stepped onto the stage alone. The set had been prepared for something grand. Lights, projections, empty chairs that were meant to host holographic versions of the others. He stared at them, then ripped them from the floor. The broadcast went live. Millions of fans tuned in. They expected fan service, smiles, maybe a teaser. What they saw was Jungkook, standing alone in the dark, staring straight into the camera. He didn't blink. This isn't a comeback, he said. A pause. The chat exploded in confusion. This is a confession. Jimin cut in the pre-recorded media. Video logs from the vault. Surveillance footage. Audio files. Screenshots of contracts, erased messages from Jin, internal memos marked confidential, Project Icarus. Jungkook kept speaking. You loved us, but you never really knew us. Everything was scripted. Every tear, every reunion, every fight. Our pain was part of a bigger plan, a manipulation. They turned us into gods so you'd never question the cage. Images flashed across the screen. Children in labs, biometric trackers, files labeled with code names and debut dates. Taehyung's voice rang out through the speakers. They said we were family. They lied. Jungkook looked down. For a second, he felt the weight of it all pressing against his chest like a collapsing star. The friendships, the sacrifices, the music, was it all a lie? He looked back up. No, he whispered. We were real. The three of us are real, but now we need you to open your eyes. Then came the final file. The one from Jin. A video. Pre-recorded, shaky, hidden, shot in a dark room. Jin stared into the camera, face bruised but defiant. If you're watching this, then they failed. They didn't erase me, not all of me. Jungkook, you were never the weapon, you were the key. And Jimin, Taehyung, if you're there, I'm proud of you. Tell the truth, no matter what it costs. The screen faded to black. Then static. And then total silence. Until a single message appeared on the stream. THY lied. We remember. The servers began to crash. But it was too late. The video was everywhere, reposted, clipped, screen recorded by millions, uploaded to news outlets, torrent sites, darknet forums. There was no taking it back. Back in the control room, HYBE's executives screamed into phones. Ms. Kang, the woman known as Hades, stormed through the corridor like a blade unsheathed. But by the time she reached the main studio, it was already empty. Jungkook, Jimin, and Taehyung had vanished. For weeks, the world spun in chaos. Armies were torn apart, some screamed betrayal, others screamed freedom. Protests flooded online platforms, lawsuits followed. Former trainees stepped forward, whistleblowers emerged. The truth infected everything. And HYBE. HYBE bled. Its stock plummeted, its board fractured. Investigations poured in from every direction. But the three of them, they stayed silent. Until one day, months later, a new video appeared on an anonymous channel. Jimin, Taehyung, and Jungkook, sitting together in the sun, no makeup, no handlers, no scripts, just three boys who had become something more than idols. Jungkook looked into the camera. We don't want forgiveness, he said. We want you to know the truth. And if you're still with us, if you still believe in us, then help us build something new, something real. Jimin smiled, a soft, haunted smile, but real. Taehyung nodded, and the screen faded to black. The industry would never be the same. But for the first time in their lives, neither were they. They were free. Not perfect, not untouched, but free. And in the ashes of everything they had once been, they began again, not as legends, not as lab rats, not as icons, but as men. And this time, they would write the story themselves.